Waitress defends biker from police harassment. The next morning, 352 riders show up at her diner. The coffee pot shattered against the industrial kitchen floor, its dark contents spreading like an oil spill across the checkered tiles. Sarah Collins froze, her hand still positioned where the pot had been seconds ago. Above her head, through the thin ceiling of the Route 87 diner, Max's low growl confirmed what her instincts were screaming. Something was wrong. 3 weeks of maintaining her cover as a waitress had taught her every squeak of this diner's ancient floorboards, every rhythm of its regular customers, every pattern of its late-night traffic. The 2 police officers who had just stepped out of their patrol car didn't fit any of those patterns. "Everything okay back there, Sally?" Tom, the night cook, called out. Sarah had gotten used to responding to her cover name, but tonight her focus was entirely on the scene unfolding through the rain-streaked windows. "Just Butterfingers," she called back, already moving to grab the mop. The position would give her a perfect view of the parking lot while appearing to clean. Must be getting tired. The officers were approaching a lone motorcycle, its chrome surfaces reflecting the diner's neon signs in ripples of red and blue. The rider, an elderly man with a silver beard that caught the same neon glow, was just securing his helmet to the bike's lock. Something about the officer's approach made Sarah's neck hair stand on end. Too purposeful, too practiced, too predatory. Upstairs, Max's growl deepened. 6 years as partners had taught Sarah to read every nuance of her K9 companion's sounds. This particular growl meant danger, not just suspicion. The Belgian Malinois had proven his instincts right too many times to ignore. Sarah positioned herself by the window, mechanically pushing the mop across the already clean floor. The elderly biker was reaching for his wallet, his movements calm and practiced. The taller officer's hand was resting too casually on his holster, a rookie mistake that no trained Atlanta PD officer would make during a routine stop. "Your registration!" the shorter officer demanded, loud enough to carry through the diner's thin windows. "And explain again how someone like you affords a bike like this." The elderly man's voice was steady, dignified. "As I said, officer, I've owned this Harley for 20 years. Here are all my papers, including the original bill of sale." Sarah's gaze caught the patch on the biker's leather vest. Vietnam Veteran Riders Association. The pieces clicked together in her mind, matching patterns from the case files she'd been studying. 3 other veterans had reported being harassed about their bikes in this area over the past month. 2 of those bikes had later disappeared. She slipped her phone from her apron pocket, starting the video recording as she had been trained. Above, Max's pacing stopped. He'd picked up on her shift in energy. Sarah could picture him taking his observation position by the apartment window, where he'd spent countless hours during their surveillance shifts. The taller officer suddenly grabbed the biker's papers, making a show of inspecting them under his flashlight. "These look fake to me. We're going to have to impound this vehicle until we can verify. Is there a problem out here?" Sarah pushed through the diner's door, her voice carrying the perfect blend of concerned waitress and someone who'd seen enough late-night trouble to be wary. The phone in her apron pocket continued recording. Both officers turned, and Sarah caught the micro-expression of annoyance that crossed the shorter one's face. A real officer would have appreciated a witness to a legitimate stop. "Ma'am, please return inside. This is police business." Sarah took another step forward instead, making sure her phone had a clear angle. "Well, seeing as Mr. Cooper here is one of my regulars, I'd feel better making sure everything's okay." The name was a guess, based on the VVRA patch, but the slight relaxation in the elderly biker's shoulders told her she'd hit the mark. The taller officer's hand tightened on his holster, another rookie tell. "Last warning, get back inside or—" A sharp bark cut through the night air. Max wasn't supposed to draw attention to himself during their undercover operations, but Sarah knew this particular bark. It was his alert signal, warning her about movement she couldn't see. She caught it a second later, a third figure slipping between the parked cars behind the motorcycle, carrying what looked suspiciously like a chain and bolt cutter. You know what? Sarah pulled her phone out openly now, making sure both officers saw her recording. I think I'll stay right here. And I think you gentlemen should probably leave before I finish uploading this video of two officers carrying fake badges. The Atlanta PD changed their badge design 3 months ago, by the way, trying to steal a veteran's motorcycle. The change was instant. The taller officer's hand dropped from his holster, and the shorter one took a step back. The figure between the cars disappeared into the shadows. "This isn't over," the shorter officer muttered, but Sarah was already rattling off their fake patrol car's plate number into her phone's recording. They fled, tires squealing against wet asphalt. Sarah waited until they were gone before turning to the elderly biker. "Mr. Cooper, let me get you a cup of coffee, on the house, and if you're willing, I'd like to hear if you know about any other veterans who've had similar troubles." Inside, she could hear Max's soft whine of approval. It was their shared signal that he'd memorized the suspect's sense, something that would prove invaluable later. But for now, Sarah had a witness to interview and a cover to maintain. As she led Mr. Cooper to a corner booth, her mind was already racing. 3 weeks of dead ends, and finally they had a solid lead. But her instincts, honed by years of undercover work and partnership with Max, told her this was just the beginning. The fake officers had been too confident, too practiced. They were part of something bigger. From his hidden perch upstairs, Max let out one more soft sound, a barely audible whimper that only Sarah would recognize. It was his way of saying he'd detected something else, something that would have to wait until the diner closed and they could investigate properly. Sarah poured coffee for Mr. Cooper with the practiced ease of a career waitress, all while her trained eye caught the details of his expression, his body language, the way his hands shook slightly despite his calm demeanor. He had more to tell her, and somewhere in this diner, Max had found another piece of their puzzle. The night shift was just beginning. "Your dog's got quite the timing," Mr. Cooper said, glancing toward the ceiling where Max's bark had come from earlier. The diner had emptied out, leaving only the veteran nursing his 3rd cup of coffee in the corner booth. Sarah caught the knowing look in his eyes and felt her pulse quicken. The kitchen's swinging door burst open. "Sally!" Tom's voice carried an edge she hadn't heard before. "Need you back here, now." The night cook's usually relaxed demeanor had been replaced by something tighter, more controlled. Sarah had seen that look before, on suspects who knew they were about to be cornered. Sarah touched the phone in her apron pocket, making sure it was still recording. Above, Max's claws clicked softly across the floor. He'd picked up on the tension in Tom's voice, too. Their years of partnership had taught him to read human voices almost as well as she could read his various barks and growls. The fluorescent lights flickered as she pushed through the door. Tom wasn't alone. Marcus Green, the diner's owner, stood by the industrial sink with 2 men Sarah recognized from her case files, though she wasn't supposed to know them. One was a health inspector who'd visited 3 diners before they'd reported motorcycles stolen from their lots. The other had been photographed outside a chop shop the Atlanta PD had been watching. "Sally!" Green's voice was honey-coated poison. His fingers drummed against the stainless steel counter in a rhythm that seemed practiced. "These gentlemen say you caused some trouble earlier." Sarah channeled every bit of her waitress persona, letting her shoulders slump with exhaustion. "Trouble? I just stopped some fake cops from harassing a customer. Figured that's what you'd want, Mr. Green. Keep the customers happy, right?" She adjusted her apron, making sure her backup phone was still secured in its hidden pocket. The health inspector, Williams, according to her mental files, stepped forward. His shoes squeaked against the recently mopped floor, leaving traces of red clay that definitely hadn't come from the diner's parking lot. Those officers were conducting legitimate business that doesn't concern diner staff. A thump from above made everyone look up. Sarah silently thanked Max for the distraction. "That darned neighbor's dog," she said, rolling her eyes, "always causing a racket." She'd spent weeks establishing this cover story, and now it was paying off. "Speaking of noise," Green said, moving to block her path, "I hear you took a video of the incident." His stance was casual, but Sarah noticed how he kept his right side slightly turned away. Former boxer, she guessed, protecting his dominant side out of habit. Sarah's hand instinctively touched her phone, just trying to protect the customer and the diner's reputation. She took a step back toward the door, but Tom had moved to block it, his cook's apron spotted with what looked less like food stains and more like motor oil under the harsh kitchen lights. The click of Max's claws crossed the ceiling again, followed by a playful bark. Sarah recognized it as his signal that he'd picked up a new scent trail. Something in the diner was connecting to their investigation, something strong enough for him to risk breaking their usual silence. "The video, Sally." Green held out his hand. "Now." A gold ring on his finger caught the light. New jewelry since yesterday, definitely above a diner owner's pay grade. The diner's bell rang. Someone had entered the front. "Hello?" a familiar voice called out. "Anyone working?" Sarah's heart nearly stopped. She knew that voice. Officer Pete Martinez from her precinct. 3 months of undercover work could go up in smoke if he recognized her. "I'll get it," she said quickly, but Tom grabbed her arm. His fingers were calloused in places that didn't match with kitchen work, more like the kind of calluses you get from stripping wires. The video first. Above them, Max started barking in earnest now, not his usual controlled signals, but the kind of excited barking any normal dog might make at a visitor. Sarah could read the subtle differences, though. He was telling her he'd found something significant upstairs. "That mutt," Green muttered, glancing at Williams with concern. "Tom, go shut it up. And you," he turned to Sarah, "don't move." His hand slipped into his pocket, and Sarah caught the outline of something that definitely wasn't a cell phone. As Tom headed for the back stairs, Sarah pulled out her decoy phone, making a show of accessing the video. "Fine, but I already sent it to my sister for safekeeping, just in case." "Hello?" Pete's voice came again, closer now. "Health Department inspection. Need to check the kitchen." Green's face went pale. "Williams, I thought you said we were clear for the month." The fake inspector's confusion confirmed Sarah's suspicions. They used health inspections as cover for their operations. "Back door," Green ordered, his casual demeanor cracking. "Rodriguez, get the stuff from the basement. Williams, you're with me up front." Sarah heard Max's barking grow distant. He was leading Tom on a chase through the apartment. Smart dog. She used the moment of chaos to press her earpiece. "Central, you getting all this?" "Clear as day," came the soft response. "Martinez is our plant. Max's tracker shows him keeping the cook occupied upstairs." Rodriguez emerged from the basement door, carrying nothing visible, but leaving behind a distinct odor of motor oil and fresh paint. Sarah pretended to be busy wiping counters as he rushed out the back door, noting how he favored his right leg. When Sarah finally returned to the dining room, Cooper was standing at the register, leaving a generous tip. His eyes met hers with unexpected intensity. "Thanks for the coffee, miss, and the help earlier. Means a lot to have someone watching out for us old riders." As she handed him his change, he pressed a folded piece of paper into her palm. "Might want to check out the veterans' ride happening tomorrow morning. Could be interesting." Sarah waited until he left before reading the note. 352 of us, all with stories about fake cops and missing bikes. We'll be here at dawn. P.S. Your partner's signals need work. Good dog, though. From upstairs came a single quiet bark. Max's signal that the coast was clear and he'd found something important. The night wasn't over yet, and Sarah had a feeling tomorrow would bring more than just a few hundred bikers to their investigation. Sarah clutched the note from Cooper in her hand, memories flooding back as she climbed the narrow stairs to the apartment. The last time she'd seen this many motorcycles gathered in one place was during the Harbor Street case, the case that had almost cost Max his life. The door creaked open to reveal Max sitting alertly by the window, his dark eyes fixed on the back alley. No excited greeting, no playful bark. He was still in work mode. Sarah pulled off her waitress wig, letting her natural brown hair fall free. "What did you find, partner?" Max padded over to the kitchen area, his nails clicking against the worn linoleum. He stopped at a specific floorboard, nose twitching. Sarah had learned years ago not to question his instincts. Kneeling down, she ran her fingers along the edges until she found the loose corner. The board came up easily, too easily. Beneath it lay a stack of papers, registration documents, inspection certificates, all with the same official stamp, all forged. A familiar knot formed in her stomach as she examined them under her flashlight. "Just like Harbor Street," she whispered. Max whined softly, pressing against her leg. He remembered too. 18 months ago they'd been investigating a series of motorcycle thefts near the Harbor District. Simple case, or so they'd thought. But when they'd gotten too close, the thieves had tried to take Max out of the equation. The memory of finding him unconscious, drugged with something meant for much larger targets, still haunted her. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Central. Martinez cleared the kitchen. No sign of Green or Williams. Rodriguez's car spotted heading east on Palmer. She scratched behind Max's ears, feeling the small scar hidden beneath his fur. "We're smarter this time, aren't we, boy?" The Belgian Malinois leaned into her touch, but his attention never left the window. Something else was bothering him. Moving to join him at his observation post, Sarah studied the back alley. Nothing seemed out of place. Dumpsters, delivery entrance, the usual late-night shadows, but Max's posture remained rigid, focused. A motorcycle engine rumbled in the distance, then another, and another. It wasn't even dawn yet, but the 352 were already starting to gather. Sarah checked her watch. 4:47 a.m. The diner would open at 6:00. "Officer Collins!" The voice in her earpiece was Captain Rogers. "Status report." Sarah pulled out her second phone, photographing the forged documents. Max found registration papers hidden under the floorboards. Same stamp as the Harbor Street forgeries. "This isn't just a local operation, Cap. They're connected." Silence on the other end. The Harbor Street case had cost the department more than just Max's near miss. 2 officers had been exposed as corrupt, and a senior detective had taken early retirement rather than face investigation. "The 352 riders," Rogers finally said. "Cooper's people. Can they be trusted?" Sarah watched another group of motorcycles cruise past the diner, their engines purposefully quiet in the pre-dawn darkness. "Cooper made me as law enforcement right away. Didn't blow my cover, though. These are veterans, Cap. They've been targeted because the thieves figured their age made them easy marks." Max suddenly stiffened, a low growl building in his throat. Sarah followed his gaze to the basement window of the diner. A light had flicked on, just for a moment. "Someone's down there," she whispered into her earpiece. "Max, find Tom." The dog moved silently to the door, then hesitated. Sarah knew that hesitation. "What is it, boy?" Instead of heading downstairs, Max trotted to the small bathroom. The window there overlooked the diner's roof. Sarah followed, understanding dawning as she spotted the figure crouched by the rooftop ventilation shaft. Tom. "Central. Suspect is accessing the building through the roof. Possible evidence disposal in progress." "Hold position," Rogers ordered. "Backup is 3 minutes out." Sarah watched Tom feed something down the shaft. Papers, by the look of it. The same kind of papers currently spread across her floor. Max's muscles were tense, ready to spring into action. "No," Sarah said softly, placing a hand on his back. "Not like Harbor Street. We do this smart." The memory surfaced again. Max charging ahead, trying to protect her from an unseen threat. The needle filled with tranquilizers meant for horses. 3 days of not knowing if he'd wake up. A new engine sound cut through the night, not a motorcycle this time. Tom's head snapped up at the approaching police sirens. He grabbed something from his pocket, something that glinted in the streetlight. "Central. Suspect is armed. I'm initiating pursuit." But before Sarah could move, Max had already slipped away from her hand. Not toward the roof, but back to the loose floorboard. He pawed at it urgently. Sarah knelt down, pushing aside the papers they'd already found. Her flashlight beam caught something else. A photograph. Her hands trembled as she lifted it. The image showed a group of men standing around a motorcycle. She recognized Green and Williams, But it was the third figure that made her blood run cold. Detective Michael Hayes, her former partner from Harbor Street. The man who'd chosen retirement over investigation. He was handing something to Green, a stack of papers with the same distinctive stamp. Max's whine brought her back to the present. The sirens were closer now. On the roof, Tom was scrambling toward the fire escape. Central, delay those sirens and get me everything we have on Michael Hayes's current whereabouts. This just got complicated. She tucked the photo into her pocket and checked her weapon. Dawn was approaching, and with it 352 motorcycles and their riders. But Sarah had a feeling the real ghosts they needed to worry about weren't the ones coming with the sunrise. Max pressed against her leg again, his way of saying he had her back. Always had, always would. Sarah smiled grimly. Ready to finish what we started at Harbor Street, partner? His quiet bark was all the answer she needed. Dawn painted Atlanta's skyline in shades of amber when the first rumble of engines echoed through the empty streets. Sarah, back in her waitress disguise, watched from the diner's window as motorcycles began filling the parking lot. Harleys, Indians, Triumphs. Decades of American iron rolling in with military precision. Max's quiet whine from upstairs carried through her earpiece. He'd caught Hayes's scent on the photograph, but the trail had gone cold at the rooftop ventilation shaft. Now they had a bigger problem, maintaining cover while coordinating 352 potential witnesses. "Orders, Collins?" Captain Rogers' voice crackled in her ear. Sarah adjusted her blonde wig, counting bikes. "We play it cool. These veterans might be our best shot at connecting Hayes to the operation. Max has both basement entrances covered. If anyone tries to access the evidence..." The diner's door chimed. Cooper led the first group inside, his silver beard catching the morning light. 6 other riders followed, all Vietnam or Gulf War vets, Sarah noted, all wearing patches marking their service. "Morning, Sally," Cooper called out, his voice carrying just enough weight to remind her that he knew exactly who she was. "Guess we brought you some breakfast, Rush." Coffee's hot," Sarah replied, falling into her waitress role, "though I might need help keeping up with this crowd." Right on cue, 3 more waitresses walked in. Undercover officers Rogers had called in overnight. The regulars would have questioned a suddenly overstaffed diner. By 6:30, every seat was filled, with more riders arriving by the minute. The parking lot had overflowed onto surrounding streets. Sarah moved between tables, picking up fragments of conversations, each rider with their own story of suspicious police stops and missing bikes. "Pulled me over 3 times in 1 week. Said my registration looked fake. Woke up to an empty garage." Max's bark interrupted her thoughts, the alert signal they'd developed after Harbor Street. Sarah excused herself and headed for the kitchen, keying her mic. "Talk to me, partner." A series of soft woofs translated in her mind. Movement in the basement. Sarah glanced at the new waitresses, catching Jenny's eye. The undercover officer smoothly moved to block the kitchen's back door. Sarah pushed through the swinging door just as Tom emerged from the basement steps, freezing when he saw her. His arms were full of papers, more registration documents. "Need help with that order, Tom?" She kept her voice casual, noting how his eyes darted to the back exit. "Just cleaning up some old invoices." "Really?" Sarah stepped closer. "Because they look an awful lot like motorcycle registrations. Same kind Hayes used to forge for you." The color drained from Tom's face. "I don't know any Hayes. The photo says different. The one Max found upstairs. Your old boss wasn't too careful about documenting his retirement plan." Tom's muscles tensed. Sarah recognized the look, a cornered suspect weighing their options. But before either could move, a commotion erupted from the dining room. "That's my bike," someone shouted. "The one that was stolen last month." Sarah rushed back out. A massive rider, his leather vest covered in Marine Corps patches, stood pointing through the window at a motorcycle being towed into the back lot. Green was supervising the delivery, his face turning ash-white as he spotted the crowd inside. "Central," Sarah whispered. "Target is on scene with new evidence." "We need to move now." "Negative," Rogers replied. "We need Hayes. Let it play out." Sarah grit her teeth, watching Green hurry toward the basement entrance. They were about to lose everything. Unless... "Mr. Cooper," she called out, pitching her voice to Carrie, "could you tell everyone about what happened last night? About the fake officers?" The veteran stood, commanding the room's attention. As he recounted the attempted theft, Sarah saw what Max had already detected. Green slipping through the kitchen, trying to reach Tom. A sharp bark from upstairs. Max had spotted something else. Sarah didn't hesitate. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, dropping her waitress accent, "I'm Detective Sarah Collins, Atlanta PD. This diner is part of an ongoing investigation into organized motorcycle theft. And that man," she pointed at Green, "is about to destroy your evidence." The room erupted. Cooper's veterans moved with practiced efficiency, blocking exits. Green bolted for the basement, but found his path blocked by 3 former Force Recon Marines. "Sarah!" Max's urgent bark drew her attention to the window. A familiar car was peeling out of the back lot, Hayes behind the wheel. "Central, former Detective Hayes is on scene, requesting immediate pursuit." "Already on it," Rogers replied. "State Patrol has him blocked at the interchange, but Collins—" "How did Max spot him from inside?" Sarah smiled, watching her partner trot through the dining room, head held high. "He didn't. He recognized the sound of Hayes's engine, never forgot it after Harbor Street." The next hour passed in a blur of arrests and evidence collection. Tom broke first, laying out the whole operation. Hayes had been running it for years, using his police connections to identify targets and his knowledge of department procedures to create foolproof forgeries. By noon, the diner had transformed into a combination of command center and veterans meeting hall. Bikers provided statements between bites of pancakes served by real waitresses now. The stolen motorcycle count had risen to 47, each one documented in Hayes's meticulous records. "You know," Cooper said, watching Max accept scratches from admiring riders, "when I first spotted you two, I figured you were hunting the same small-time crooks we were. Never thought you'd help us take down something this big." Sarah unclipped her blonde wig, letting Max rest his head in her lap. "Sometimes the best partners are the ones you least expect." Cooper nodded toward the window, where Hayes sat handcuffed in a patrol car. "Harbor Street won't happen again. We've got your back now, all 352 of us." Max's tail thumped against the floor. Outside, motorcycles still lined the street, their chrome sparkling in the midday sun. Sarah scratched her partner's ears, feeling the small scar hidden beneath his fur. "Think this makes up for Harbor Street, boy?" Max's eyes met hers, full of the same unwavering trust they'd shared for 6 years. His soft woof needed no translation. Every case made them stronger, but partnership like theirs, that was beyond measure. Hayes's smirk vanished the moment Max stepped into the interrogation room. Sarah watched her former partner's hands twitch beneath the handcuffs, his eyes fixing on the scar, barely visible in her K9 partner's fur, the scar his men had given Max at Harbor Street. "No dog in the interrogation room," Hayes protested, but his voice lacked conviction. He'd trained Sarah himself, taught her every procedure. He knew Max had every right to be there as a certified K9 officer. "He goes where I go," Sarah replied, setting down a thick folder. "Especially when it involves someone who tried to kill him." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she spread photographs across the metal table. The diner's basement, the forged registrations, the stolen motorcycles, and finally, the picture Max had found. Hayes with Green and Williams, caught in the act of selling fake papers. "You know what I can't figure out?" Sarah leaned forward, keeping her voice steady despite the anger churning inside. "Was Harbor Street where it started, or just where you got sloppy?" Hayes's jaw clenched. "I want my lawyer." "Your lawyer's already been called. But these gentlemen?" Sarah nodded toward the observation window. "They've been waiting 18 months to meet you." The door opened. Cooper entered, followed by 2 other veterans. Sarah recognized them from the Harbor Street case files, the original victims, the ones whose statements she'd taken, while Max fought for his life in the veterinary ICU. "Detective Hayes." Cooper's voice carried the weight of decades of military command. "Remember us?" Max moved silently to position himself between Hayes and the door. Not a threat, just a reminder. The former detective's eyes darted between his old victims and his former protégé. "Whatever they told you," Hayes started, but Cooper cut him off. "They didn't have to tell us anything. We figured it out ourselves. After Sarah and Max broke up your operation at Harbor Street, the bike theft stopped, but only in that district. They just moved here following your retirement route." Sarah opened another folder, 352 testimonies, matching dates, methods, and descriptions. "You trained those fake cops yourself, didn't you? Teaching them every procedure just like you taught me? You're reaching, Collins." But Hayes's confident mask was cracking. "A few coincidences and some bitter old men with faulty memories." Max growled, low and threatening. Not his usual controlled warning, but something deeper, more personal. Hayes flinched. "That's the interesting thing about military veterans," Sarah continued. "They notice details, write things down, compare notes. And when someone starts targeting their community," she gestured to Cooper and his companions, "they organize. We tracked every theft," one of the veterans spoke up, "every suspicious stop, built a pattern while you thought we were just easy marks. But you made a mistake at Harbor Street. You hurt one of our own." Hayes frowned. "I never touched any of your—" "She means Max," Sarah interrupted. "See, these men did their homework. Learned that Max was a retired military dog before joining the force. 3 tours in Afghanistan. The K9 community takes care of their own, Hayes, just like veterans do." The door opened again. Captain Rogers entered with a new file. Forensics came back on the tranquilizers used on Max at Harbor Street, matched them to a batch that went missing from the evidence room. Only 3 people had access. Care to guess who signed them out? Hayes's composure finally shattered. "It wasn't supposed to go that far. Green panicked, said a police dog would trace the bikes back to the chop shop. I only gave them enough to knock him out for a few hours." "It was enough to kill him." Sarah's voice turned ice cold. "If Cooper hadn't been there that night, heard Max collapse during his surveillance." The veteran nodded grimly. "Called in a K9 medical emergency. My brother's a veterinarian. Good thing, too. Regular vet wouldn't have known the counteragent doses for military-grade tranquilizers." Max padded forward, eyes locked on Hayes. The former detective pressed back in his chair, but Sarah recognized the look in her partner's gaze. Not revenge, justice. "Here's what happens next." Sarah laid out a confession form. "You give us everything. The whole network. Every fake cop, every chop shop, every forged document. In return, these men," she nodded to the veterans, "don't file separate charges in every jurisdiction where you stole from their community." "And if I don't?" Cooper smiled coldly. "Then we do file those charges, all 352 of them. Plus, I believe there's still an open military investigation into that tranquilizer theft. Attacking a former service animal carries some interesting penalties under military law." Hayes looked at his former rookie, then at the K9 partner he'd tried to eliminate. Finally, his shoulders sagged. "Get me a pen." Sarah handed him one, then stepped back to stand with Max. As Hayes began writing, Cooper touched her shoulder. "You two okay?" he asked quietly. "Confronting him after all this time?" Sarah watched Hayes scribbling frantically, documenting years of corruption. Max leaned against her leg, his usual signal that everything was under control. "We're good," she answered. "Sometimes you have to face old ghosts to put them to rest." Max woofed softly in agreement. The scar in his fur might remain, but today it wasn't a reminder of betrayal. It was proof that partnership, loyalty, and justice would always win in the end. Hayes looked up from his confession, face pale as he watched Sarah and Max together, the rookie he'd underestimated and the K9 partner he'd failed to eliminate. Both stronger now, tempered by his betrayal rather than broken by it. "I taught you everything you know," he muttered. Sarah scratched Max's ears. "No," she corrected. "He did." 3 months after the arrests, Sarah pulled into the Route 87 diner's parking lot in her unmarked car. Max sat up in the passenger seat, his tail wagging as he recognized the familiar neon sign, now restored to its former glory. The under new management banner had been replaced by something more fitting, a hand-painted motorcycle alongside a police badge. Cooper stood at the entrance, his leather vest now sporting a new patch, a German Shepherd silhouette with K9 Guardian embroidered beneath it. The veterans had made Max an honorary member of their association after the case closed. "Our usual booth?" Sarah asked as she approached. Today she wore her official detective's badge instead of a waitress apron. "Actually," Cooper gestured to the parking lot, "we might need the whole diner." Motorcycles were filing in just like that morning 3 months ago. But today they weren't gathering to expose a crime. They were here to celebrate justice being served. Hayes's sentencing hearing had finished an hour ago. Inside, the diner had transformed. The counter where Sarah had played waitress now displayed newspaper clippings about the case. The booth where she'd first met Cooper had become a permanent memorial, featuring photos of recovered bikes reunited with their owners. 25 years, Cooper said as they settled into a corner table. No chance of parole, plus all the military charges. Max rested his head on Sarah's lap as she sipped her coffee, served in the same mug she'd used during her undercover shifts. Hayes gave up everything, every connection, every accomplice. The DA said it's the biggest police corruption case they've seen in a decade. Speaking of accomplices, Cooper nodded toward the television mounted above the counter. The news was showing Green and Williams being led into court. The ticker beneath revealed their plea deals, 15 years each, in exchange for testimony against the remaining chop shop networks. Tom had gotten 10 years, reduced from 20 for his immediate cooperation. "How many bikes total?" Cooper asked, though he already knew the answer. 174, Sarah replied, across 3 states, every single one recovered and returned. She scratched Max's ears. "Thanks to this guy's nose." The diner's door chimed continuously as more riders arrived. Sarah recognized faces from the case files, victims whose statements had helped build the prosecution. Some nodded to her in recognition. Others simply touched their hands to their hearts when they saw Max, remembering how close they'd come to losing him at Harbor Street. "You know," Cooper leaned back, watching the crowd, "when I first spotted you that night, I almost warned the others. Thought you might be one of Hayes's plants. What changed your mind?" "Him," Cooper gestured to Max. "Way he moved, how he communicated with you. Reminded me of the K9 units I worked with overseas. That kind of partnership can't be faked." Sarah felt Max tense slightly beside her. Following his gaze, she spotted Captain Rogers entering with a folder under his arm. The captain made his way through the crowd of leather-clad veterans, accepting handshakes and greetings. "Detective Collins," Rogers set the folder on their table. "Thought you'd want to see this first." Inside was a newly minted certificate, the official document establishing Route 87 as Atlanta's first safe stop location. The program, inspired by their case, created designated safe spaces where motorists could verify the authenticity of police stops. "It's being implemented statewide," Rogers continued. "Cooper's veterans are helping train other businesses to spot fake law enforcement. We're even getting calls from other states wanting to copy the program." Max's tail thumped against the floor. He'd known something good was coming. He always did. "There's more." Rogers pulled out another document. "The K9 training program is being completely revamped. New protocols for undercover work, based on your methods. They're calling it the Max Protocol." Sarah felt her throat tighten. The scar in Max's fur had faded, but the lessons they'd learned at Harbor Street had changed police work for the better. A sharp whistle cut through the diner noise. Cooper stood, calling for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "most of you know why we're here. 3 months ago, a waitress and her neighbor's dog helped us take down a criminal enterprise that had been targeting our community for years." Chuckles rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew the true story now. But this isn't just about catching bad cops or recovering stolen bikes. It's about partnership, trust, the kind that makes a detective risk her career to protect strangers, the kind that makes a community of veterans band together to protect their own. Cooper raised his coffee mug. To Detectives Sarah Collins and Max, proof that the best partnerships aren't always the obvious ones. The diner erupted in cheers. Max lifted his head, accepting the attention with characteristic dignity. Sarah felt Cooper press something into her hand, a small metal badge identical to the one painted on the diner's new sign. "Honorary member of the Veterans Motorcycle Association," he explained. "Both of you." Though he winked at Max. "I think he already knew that." Sarah pinned the badge next to her detective shield as Rogers pulled up a chair. "So," the captain said, "I've got a new case that could use your unique approach. String of car thefts targeting elderly drivers, thinking we might need a retirement home waitress and her therapy dog." Max's ears perked up. Sarah smiled, feeling the familiar spark of anticipation. "What do you think, partner? Ready for another undercover?" His soft woof needed no translation. As long as they were together, they were ready for anything. Outside, the late afternoon sun gleamed off rows of motorcycles. Inside, veterans swapped stories over coffee and pie. And in their corner booth, a detective and her K9 partner began planning their next case, knowing that whatever came next, they had a whole community watching their backs. The scar in Max's fur had faded to almost nothing, but the bonds forged in that diner, those would last forever.